Good afternoon. I'm Mark Greenfield. As chairman of the Associated Student, thank you. I'd like to welcome you to another one of our noon lecture programs. Today's guest, of course, is Dan Rowan, and we're going to try something different with our program today. Mr. Rowan is only going to answer questions and not bore you with a speech. And we have two guards who'll run mics.
Mine doesn't work. That's the reason I'm not going to bore you. I don't have a mic.
If we can get sound from Mr. Rowan, what we'll do is run mics up either aisle. And if anyone has a question, raise your hand and a mic will be brought to you. And Mr. Rowan will field anything that is less than mildly offensive.
I'm going to need a mic. Do you want me to use yours? Oh, here it comes. Any problem hearing? No? Very well. I don't intend to make a speech because I wouldn't know what the hell to talk to you about. I was delighted to be asked over here because I was happy to hear anyone was interested in our show, to the point they'd like to ask questions about it. I will answer any questions that you have. I am not here as a politician, nor am I here to make any social or economic comment. Our show does that secondarily. As opposed to the Smothers Brothers program, we have no political base from which to work. We are apolitical. We have 14 writers on the show, and they range, they cover the full spectrum of politics, from right to left. And consequently, I think we generally end up being a little more liberal than conservative. We're a little more conservationist than not. We are, especially most of us, are peace-oriented as opposed to violence-oriented as the networks are. No, that's true. We live in a violently oriented society. It is, for instance, impossible to show a very beautiful woman and a very beautiful man making love on the screen, but you can show two horrible-looking people killing each other on the screen. And I think if you consider which is the most obscene and which is the most vulgar, that most of us in this room would agree that we'd rather see some guy jumping on some girl, right? So, well, let's get it together. What do you... Nobody wants to know anything.
How did you meet Dick? And I mean,
it was in a bawdy house in San Diego. No, we met out here in the West Coast. He was standing behind the bar of a saloon where he was tending bar, eating a banana. That's the truth. That's where I first saw him.
all right, then how did you get started on your career together?
I can't hear you, love.
How did you get started on your career together?
Together? Well, we'd both been trying different things in the business. Our backgrounds were quite a bit different. I was born into show business, sort of the hind end of it, the carnival business. My folks were carnies. I grew up on the road until I was about 10 or 11 years old, following traveling shows, carnival shows, medicine shows, Chautauqua. None of you would know what that is unless you've been reading history. But Dick was raised in Battle Creek, Michigan, from a very standard middle-class background with no history of show business in his family, and is a very funny guy. Came to California, started picking up work as a stringer for several show business papers and magazines in the East. Started covering the studios, and then he teamed up as a straight man with two other people. One act, I think, lasted about 20 minutes, and the other one a day and a half. I mean, they weren't... He did a gimmick thing. His real name is Dick Martin. He teamed up with a guy whose real name was Artie Lewis, and they went on the road as Martin and Lewis, with the first names very small on the marquee, and people used to get very upset when they'd go in and not see Dean and Jerry. I had been a writer at Paramount Pictures as a screenwriter, and had also been in some Shakespearean repertory companies as an actor. I had gotten out of that business through economic necessity and had sold used cars. Decided I didn't like the world of commerce, and so I was looking around, and a mutual friend introduced us, and we have never been heard from since.
Did you have your supporting players in mind when the format for Laugh-In evolved?
We didn't have the specific people in mind, all of them. We did have a company of players in mind. This is the thing that Dick and I wanted to do for some time. You see, it is impossible when you have a weekly show to produce, when you have to deliver an hour every Monday night at 8 o'clock for 26 straight weeks. It is impossible to have that much funny written material. You had better have some damn funny people to do the gentle lines. They bring something extra to it. You can look at some of the lines that Joanne Worley reads, or Ruth Buzzy, or Artie, or any of those people. The lines themselves aren't funny. The people are funny. And if you are restricted to using only guest stars, generally you get a little hung up, because a lot of actors are good straight actors, but they're not funny necessarily, and you need funny people. So we always knew we were going to, if we could ever get it together and get it on, we were going to use funny people. So we had a company of players in mind. Specifically, we didn't have Artie Johnson in those days. We found Goldie 2 weeks after we started. Ruth Buzzy we had at the beginning. Well, there's no point going through the whole roster, but we had some and didn't, and then have found others. Our newest girl, Lily Tomlin, who is doing the telephone operator and other characters on the show, I saw her on Music Scene. I didn't know who she was. Turns out that our producer, George Slaughter, had been approached by her agent in the summertime and hadn't had a chance to get back in time to grab her, and she was subsequently signed by Music Scene. Music Scene went off the air, and we grabbed her, and I think she's a strong addition to the show. She'll be with us next year.
And one other question. How much, if any, of your show is improvised?
You want a percentage figure? I'd be a little hard-pressed to give it to you. I brought along, in case the censorship question was raised, some communications from NBC, and many of them I noticed in reading over them this morning before I came in, said Artie's ad-lib line, I peed on your tree, is unacceptable. I don't know. I think the NBC's got something about trees. But there were many ad-lib lines. You'll get into a sketch and will say something you didn't know you were going to say, and very often it'll pass and it'll be funny. Very often, more often it's funnier than it passes.
When is Spiro Agnew going to be on your show?
I would imagine as soon as he's invited. You might be, you know, we've had quite a group of people as guests, and we invited William F. Buckley to do cameos on the show, and I thought he was very funny in his answer. He says, not only will I not appear on that program, but I am ashamed to be asked.
Mr. Rowan, who originally came up with the idea of the General Bull Wright character?
General Bull Wright was born in a writers' meeting last summer. We needed we wanted a point of view that, exaggeratedly or not, reflected the hardcore military establishment's ideas, and I was delighted to play him. I was disappointed when we had to tone him down, but we had to. Oddly enough, I finally put in the request myself that we start softening the line from General Bull Wright, because I got an awful lot of mail from veterans' widows and veterans' mothers. The veterans themselves generally write for pictures. They want to hang Bull Wright up in their mess hall or in their tent somewhere. But the widows and mothers and that group cannot be denied, and they thought we were making fun of their brave boys. And of course that wasn't the intent at all. It was to get those kids back home.
Are you now, or do you intend to be in the future, an active candidate for governor of the state of California?
We did an interview for Playboy a couple of 4 months ago, and that question was raised, and I said then what I still feel. If I somehow got into politics, I think I'd have to jump off a building to save the world. I think all actors should automatically be given a harikari sword when they're nominated so that they can get out of it. You see, it's real insanity to think that Shirley Temple is at the United Nations and that Ronald Reagan is the governor of the state and that Chuck Connors wants to be a senator and that, it is really insane. And I don't want to hear it can only happen in California or, because we just got more kooks maybe here than they have in Maine or wherever. Actors do not belong actively in politics as candidates. I think that they certainly should exercise the prerogative as a citizen and speak their mind. If an actor can sway a vote, for instance, for God's sake, do you know that President Nixon honestly said that he felt his appearance on our show helped swing the election? If I thought that were true, I'd have to kill myself. There isn't any question that it had some beneficial effect, because I heard people say to me, hey, he must not be such a bad guy after all if he'd do that. I have no axe to grind against President Nixon. The only thing is that any time a comedy program can be that influential in a matter as important as that, then I think something's wrong with our society. We did it as a joke. We had him say, "Sock it to me," and we invited Humphrey the following week to come back, and we were going to simply give him a close-up, and he was going to look into the camera and say, "Yes." And then let people think from the week before, oh yeah, they're not going to laugh at the moment, but we figured later at night when you go home you get a little chuckle out of that. Well, our invitation to the presidential candidate for the Democrats turned down our invitation. And upon the eve of election, the man in charge of his television appearances and I were at a private home for dinner. And he told me the reason that he had turned this thing down, and he was the man who had turned it down for Humphrey. He had heard that Paul Keyes, who at that time was our producer and head writer, and was a strong Nixon man, had planned an appearance for Humphrey wherein Humphrey would be standing between my partner and me, and he would say, "Sock it to me," and Dick and I would each hit him with a bucket of water. And I looked at this idiot and I said, "Well, do you honestly think that we would treat a presidential candidate that way?" And he said, "Well..."
Do you ever get any feedback on your Flying Fickle Finger of Fate award?
Do I get any
feedback?
Feedback. Yeah, the people who object are generally those to whom it's been given. We have a sponsor, Breck. Breck is a subsidiary of the American Cyanamide Company. They have their fingers in quite a few projects, not the least of which are several drug concerns. We did a whole show once on the pharmaceutical business and related things. One sketch in particular to which they objected, but which was still on the air. Joanne walked into a drugstore and gave the guy a prescription, and he says, "That'll be $5.50," and she didn't hear the 5 and left the 50 cents on the counter and left. And the guy looked in camera and says, "Well, I still made a quarter." The point pretty obvious, of course, and we gave the drug industry the fickle finger, and we based it on some figures which were released to the effect that they spend quite a few $1 million in advertising and publicity and about 1/10 that amount of money on research. And so consequently, the high price of prescription drugs and others, non-prescription drugs, is to carry their advertising load, and I think that's sort of an inequity. I haven't got a mic for you, pal.
Do your writers openly admit to reading Mad Magazine?
Whether they admit it or not, you got to know they're stealing somewhere.
What are your feelings towards the phrase hard on, right in, as it pertains to revolutionary tactics in the realm of TV and radio broadcasting?
I really am not trying to think of an answer. I didn't hear the question.
Oh.
Do you remember the question?
Yeah. Well, okay. What are your feelings towards the phrase hard on, right in, as it pertains to revolutionary tactics in the realm of TV and radio broadcasting?
What do I believe of...
Please don't be evasive.
Did you hear it? Hard on and right in. Do these old ears deceive me? It's a new phrase to me, and I think it's rather catchy.
It's been used many times.
What did she say? What did she say? Oh. Where?
I think you're older than I thought.
What percentage of the material written for Laugh-In is censored, and what is the relationship between the censors and the Laugh-In writers?
I didn't hear the last part.
And what is the relationship between the Laugh-In writers and the censorship people?
What's the relationship between the Laugh-In writers and the censors? I think probably I can best answer that by telling you how it's done. The writers never speak to the censors, nor vice versa. One of the reasons is that we have those fellows locked up, and not too many visitors are allowed. The censors get the material about 3 weeks in advance of taping, and then they write copious notes back to us on those things that are not allowed. I will read you a typical memorandum from the NBC censors. We have a fellow this year assigned to the show named Don Rowe. Last year his name was Sandy Cummings. They are stamped out of a machine in a little town upstate New York. Here's one at random, dated January the 19th, and it regards a Flying Fickle Finger of Fate Award. We wanted to give a Fickle Finger of Fate Award to Governor Rhodes of Ohio. This had to do with Governor Rhodes and a group of people from the forestry department or office or whatever to point out the advantages of fishing in Ohio, because we had been doing a lot of things on the polluted Great Lakes and other waters, and that they are indeed killing fish. There are many, as you know, many bodies of water where fish no longer can live because of the pollution. But he was trying to promote tourism, I guess, in that part of the state, and they went out to fish with a lot of attendant publicity. They had news cameras and television cameras and photographers there, and nobody caught any fish. So one of these dudes put an electrical cord into the water and blew off an electrical charge, which of course brought a lot of fish up to the surface, stunned and dead. And then they took pictures of this great body of water just teeming with fish, and the governor is scooping them out of it. Well, we thought that was worthy of a fickle finger. Nay, nay, said the National Broadcasting Company in this note. The NBC Law Department has advised that the FFFF award, they can't bring themselves to say it, relating to Governor Rhodes of Ohio, scheduled in Laugh-In number 19, is not acceptable unless evidence can be supplied which would indicate that the governor was personally responsible for the electrocution of the fish. Perhaps the wrong party is receiving the award. Then they go to another one. They hit us 2 awards in 1 letter here. There is a wildlife preserve. There is a real euphemism for this operation. Where do you remember where it is? Is it in Fresno, Don? Somewhere up around Fresno, where these guys take baby ducks. Maybe you saw it in the news. They take baby ducks and they give them the old Pavlovian jab. They honk an automobile horn and then they head them in the direction of the food. And as they grow older, every time they're fed, they honk a horn. Now then, when they become shootable, they put them on a tower and they honk the horn, and they go towards this same feeding pond where they've always been fed. The only thing is, the added twist is that down below now, when they're on the tower, a lot of guys with shotguns, and as they honk the horn, the ducks take off to go to the feeding pond, and the guys with the shotguns shoot down the ducks. Well, we thought they ought to get a fickle finger for their training efforts of these ducks. So they said, no, the FFF award scheduled for a so-and-so show involving the Meadowview Wildlife Preserve is acceptable if it can be determined that the preserve is actually in operation. The article dealing with this award states that the preserve was to open within a few weeks. Now, if you can prove that it is open, that it is indeed killing ducks in the manner you specify, we will then look at the award on kinescope and judge it then. Now, I don't think NBC has anything against or for the Meadowview Wildlife Preserve. The reason he calls it a preserve, he says he's saving. He says this means that this increases the duck population, because these guys that go to shoot these trained ducks will then not be out shooting wild ducks, and so the wild duck life will be preserved. Kind of devious reasoning, I think. I don't know if that helps you with your censorship question, but they get the script 3 weeks in advance. They send back these things. Some of them that we can change, we change. Some of them that we don't think should be changed, we fight for. Then the week of taping the show, we go into a final meeting with them, and when they come down with a hard line, such and such a line is unacceptable, then we just simply can't do it.
Has Laugh-In ever devoted any of its time to Union Oil?
Have we ever did something to Union Oil?
Devoted any time to Union Oil Company?
Devoted any time to Union Oil? No, we haven't singled Union Oil out. We wanted to because of the Santa Barbara mess, but it seems that all oil companies are about in the same bag. Many of them have interests which overlap. I think Standard is part of that union operation. I mean, they have some leaseholds up there, and so it's a little more complicated. You can't pick one out. So what we do, we hit the whole group as opposed to singling Union Oil.
Are you your own boss, or are you responsible to someone else and under his supervision?
I don't think anybody on network television is their own boss. You have a lot of bosses. On the show that we do on Mondays, my partner and I own half of it in partnership with the production firm of Slaughter and Friendly. We do not work for them, nor do they work for us. It is indeed a partnership, but our bosses are NBC, and their bosses are those myriad vice presidents and executives, and they are all answerable, I suppose, in the final analysis to the stockholders.
Is Laugh-In a closed set, and if so, why?
Henry Gibson. Man asked me who wrote Henry Gibson's poems. Henry does. He this year was given some poems the writers had written, which we thought were pretty funny, but he flatly refuses to say by Henry Gibson unless it is by Henry Gibson.
Is Laugh-In a closed set, and if so, why?
It is not, and...
Then tickets are available, you mean?
We don't have tickets to our show. NBC wouldn't let us print any. No, that's the truth. We tape on Tuesdays and Wednesdays during the taping season, and anyone is allowed to walk in and sit down as long as they don't create a disturbance. And the show is shot movie style. I mean, we tape 2 full days. On Wednesdays, for instance, we start at noon, sometimes don't finish until midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, you can't have an audience that comes in at 3 o'clock and sits from 3 to 4 or 3 to 4:30, because in that period of time they may see just a few unrelated pieces being done that wouldn't make any sense to them. But we get some people who come back every week. They know the best times to come in. Some of them are cocktail party fans. We shoot the cocktail party at noon on Wednesdays, and it takes about an hour, and they'll come in from noon to 1. You know, so it's a very loose arrangement. If you're over in Burbank on those days and you want to see the show, you just come in.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
In your show, specifically in your jokes, why do you show so much hate towards Arabs and their leader, Jamal Abdel Nasser?
Why do we show hate towards Arabs? I didn't know that we did, sir. Can you think of a specific case in which we have?
2 nights ago, 2 or 3 nights ago, something like that, you were sarcastic Abdel Nasser.
I didn't hear you.
2 or 3 nights ago, the last show, you were sarcastic Nasser.
Nasser. Well, we are not the biggest fans he ever had. And I didn't mean to answer you facetiously. And I'm trying to think what we said about Nasser. It must have been in one of the, what we call a super, a card on the, his name lends a certain humor to almost any situation. We have no hate for our Arab brothers, my friend. Honestly, we don't. We wish that the Middle East situation could be resolved by legitimate discussion. And I'm sure that if you're Arabic, and I'm sure there are Jewish people here, you're all going to the same school. You seem to get along fairly well here. I don't know why it can't happen every place. And I think that I still believe that handling any of those situations with humor is a little bit less likely to lead to shooting than if you sit down and knock heads about it, you know. But we certainly meant no offense to a whole group of people by saying something about Nasser. No cop-out, that's just the way we feel.
When are you going to give the Board of Regents the Fickle Finger of Fate Award?
Who? Puckett? William Puckett? Can you imagine what Goldie would do with a name like that? I don't know if they really deserve it yet or not. Do you really think so? Well, maybe we'll look into it. We have all our Fickle Fingers taped for the season. We only have 2 more shows to do, so we can't do it this year. Send me some information on them, and we'll look in it. Maybe they'll be the first. The Pentagon, the show isn't on the air yet. The Pentagon's the only 3-time winner this year. And we heard from them. They want the award, and that award cost us $320, so we told them to get their own. We're not we said the mention on the air is award enough for them. They're not going to.
Is it true Ruth Buzzy's going to marry Artie Johnson?
There's a badly kept secret. Tyrone and Gladys are going to get engaged. And I think it's one of the funniest shows of the season in which they do. Whether or not the nuptials will ever be celebrated, as they used to say, remains to be seen. He, in the meantime, is still visiting the swings and goes by the playground every morning.
2 questions. You've spoken a lot of the interference and presence of the network. How about the sponsor?
Fortunately, we have escaped that problem of sponsorship on our show because we have a participating sponsor setup. We don't have, as opposed to the special Dick and I did a week ago, we had Ford as a sponsor, single sponsor. when one company picks up the tab for the show, they can more or less direct what you do. But when you have 5, 6, and 7, they never agree on anything. And so consequently, no one of them can dictate policy. If they could, of course, American Cinema wouldn't have let us put that sketch on. If they had been the sole sponsor of the show, we wouldn't have given the drug industry a fickle finger because they wouldn't have allowed it.
And the other thing is, considering the very spontaneous and fluid feeling of your show, how much rehearsal time actually goes into a laugh-in?
Our schedule, on Thursdays we sit down and the cast gets the script for the first time. We read it through and then afterwards we balance it up. Thursday afternoons are taken up with rehearsing musical numbers and involve sketches. Friday the same thing is rehearsal day. We take Saturday and Sunday off. On Monday we have a run-through at the studio of the show we're going to tape the following day and on Wednesday. Thursday we're back in to read the next week's show. So it's a full week's work, except for Saturday and Sunday off.
How do you feel about the Smothers Brothers show being thrown off the air, and do you have any more insight to it than the general public does?
Oh, I don't think I have any information which hasn't been available to anyone else. How I think about it being thrown off the air, I missed the show because I was a big fan. I don't think it should have been thrown off the air, but I think it was inevitable that it would be, not because of especially what they were doing on the show, but because of Tommy's off-network activities more than anything else. And my point to Tom, and he called me a fascist, but he calls Dickie a fascist too, so I simply said, look, you're working for these people, and if they say that they want you to do more comedy and less of this, that's what they hired you to do. And as long as you're taking their money, you pretty well have to do what they engaged you to do in the beginning. I think that's honesty, and I think and it certainly is show business. If you're working in a nightclub or working in a movie or working on television, and you are hired for a specific thing, if for instance, Andy Williams is hired for a concert, they certainly expect him to sing. If you hire Rowan and Martin or the Smothers Brothers, you expect to get a comedy show, and if you deliver something else, I don't think you have operated in good faith. That was the essential bottom line of the CBS objection to the Smothers Brothers show. I think, as a matter of fact, the quality of the shows had become poorer because they were getting very militant about things. They were getting to use the show more or less as this is the week that was, used their comedy hour. They were making more comments and they were preaching more than people wanted to hear. You know, listen, you want to hear a discussion about a certain thing, you don't turn into a comedy hour to hear it. And that's what that really was all about. Plus the fact that Tommy was flying to Washington and standing in front of newsreel cameras calling the president of the network a liar, and they just don't take kindly to that, you know. And it was no surprise to me, at least, that happened. I was on the show that was canceled. It never got on the air except when it was aired over some independent stations. And that show itself certainly was innocuous. It was a party in the valley, really, which is generally kind of a quiet affair.
Yes, how has the gala world of TV stardom affected your life?
Well, it's given me better cars in my garage and a bigger house to live in and a little better wardrobe and a lot more worries. But I enjoy it.
Mr. Rowan, in your Playboy article, I believe that you stated that you voted for President Nixon rather than Humphrey because you thought that Nixon had better executive ability. I wonder if you would reevaluate that statement now.
Well, I don't believe Humphrey has shown any great executive ability since his defeat. I campaigned, as I also pointed out in that article, for two men. I campaigned for a Republican and a Democrat, Mr. Rockefeller and Mr. McCarthy. They were the ones that I went out on the road for and gave time and money to. Neither of them got nominated. And they can't get elected if they don't get nominated, obviously. I didn't like our choices in the last election, But in the final analysis, I didn't believe I could hang out. I couldn't drop out. I had to vote because it's quite a privilege to be able to, and I think it's a duty to vote. And so I don't think you can just say, no, I'm not going to go because I don't like the two contestants. So it was a tough decision to make because I really am not a Nixon fan. But Mr. Humphrey seemed to me to be overly emotional, and Mr. Nixon seemed to me to be very cold and impersonal and hard. And I think that in the final analysis, when something of great international importance happens, I want the cold, impersonal, hard-headed guy looking at the button on the wall. That's the only reason I went that route. I thought maybe a guy could get a little upset and nervous, and, well, I don't like that, and it just, I mean, really, those are really kind of naive reasons politically, but that's really what swung me.
Mr. Rowan, would you know in the past or maybe in the future of any personalities that the FCC or the censors would not let in your program, like Pete Seeger or maybe Eldridge Cleaver?
Well, we had Dick Gregory as a guest on our show last year. The network got terribly upset when we announced him as a guest and said that they would prefer that we didn't use him. And so we said, well, we were thinking of two guests, and you pick which one you want. We either want Dr. Spock or Dick Gregory. And they opted for Gregory.
Mr. Rowan, is Laugh-In viewed outside the United States, and if so, what has it done to the image of the Americans?
Did you hear it? I'm sorry, we can't hear you. I don't know whether it's me or those mics.
Mr. Rowan, I'd like to know if Laugh-In is viewed outside the United States, and if so, has it affected in any way the American image?
It is viewed in England and in Canada and in Australia and now in Hong Kong. Whether or not it has affected the American image, I don't know. The show's very popular in those countries. It's #1 in England, as a matter of fact. I think that any time foreign people look at anything produced in America, and if they watch it with any regularity, it's bound to have some effect. I don't know whether it's beneficial or not.
Mr. Rowan, how does Artie Johnson manage to imitate the Russian language so well?
How does Artie Johnson manage to imitate the Russian language so well? Well, he has a very good ear. He's a fine mimic. He speaks no foreign languages at all. He speaks no German, he speaks no Russian, he speaks no Italian, but it sounds as if he's saying those words. Danny Kaye's a guest this week in the show we just taped, and he is a great dialectician, but he speaks some of the languages. But he and Artie sound almost alike doing those.
Mr. Rowan came here fresh from root canal surgery, and I'm going to try to spare him some misery, and we'll take one more question and let him go home and nurse his gums, okay?
Excuse me. Since, by your own admission, you've been playing the game along with the sponsors, and you've accepted this kind of a role, and yet somehow through your show, there's some feeling of social conscience and social commentary. Are you going to be doing anything in the future, let's say, outside of this mass media, large bureaucratic system, which you can say something about, quote unquote, the Sixth Society and really do something?
Well, it's a rather long question, and I'm not sure that I understand what it is you want me to do. I can only state my position in making comments. I don't think that I, nor anyone that I'm associated with on my show, are well enough informed to take the platform on any of those subjects. There are things that we feel a little uptight about, and we get that on the air from time to time. We don't get on the air to talk about those things. First of all, we want it to be funny, and if it can be funny and make a social comment at the same time that we think should be made, we do it. But that's not the reason we're on the air. And I'm sorry if that's a disappointment to you, but we're really not... That all relates back to actors in politics. Very few of them are trained nor have the information that they should have in order to be leaders. And in order to stand on a platform and give your views on anything, political or social, I think you should have more information than the average actor has. We're entertainers, essentially. And the fact that you're a Republican or a Democrat or a liberal or a conservative, unless you're very well educated in those fields, I think you ought to keep your mouth shut. Okay?
Thank you very much.